Dr. Elena Winters steadied her hands above the open chest cavity, the steady beep of monitors filling the sterile operating room. The man on the table was massive, even unconscious, broad shoulders, dark hair, and that familiar scar along his jaw that she'd once traced with her fingertips in the darkness of their shared bed. Alpha King Damon Blackwood didn't recognize her. Why would he? The broken woman he'd cast aside 5 years ago bore little resemblance to the confident surgeon she'd become. She'd shed her pack name, her wolf cowering so deep inside her that most days she forgot she wasn't entirely human. "Scalpel," she murmured to her surgical nurse, her voice steady despite the way her wolf stirred restlessly. Even unconscious, his presence called to something buried within her. She made the first incision with practiced precision, focusing on the damaged arteries that had brought the most powerful alpha in North America to her table. Ironic, really. The man who'd declared her defective now depended on her steady hands to save his life. 5 years earlier, Elena's hands trembled as she held the medical report, the pack doctor's words echoing in her mind like a death sentence. Infertile. The word burned through her consciousness, searing away every dream she'd harbored about her future as Luna of the Silvermoon Pack. "There must be a mistake," she whispered, her wolf whimpering at the devastation rolling off her in waves. Dr. Marcus shook his graying head, his expression filled with pity. "I ran the tests 3 times, Luna. Your reproductive system suffered severe damage during the rogue attack last year. I'm afraid you'll never be able to carry pups." The report crumpled in her fists. Never carry pups. Never give Damon the heirs he needed to secure his bloodline. Never fulfill her most basic duty as his mate and Luna. She walked through the pack house in a daze, pack members bowing their heads respectfully as she passed. They didn't know yet. In a few hours, when Damon returned from the Alpha Council meeting, their perfect world would shatter. Elena found herself in their bedroom, surrounded by the mahogany furniture Damon had chosen, the silk curtains she'd picked out, the photographs of their mating ceremony covering the nightstand. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of trying for pups, of failed pregnancy tests, of hope slowly dying. Now she knew why. The front door slammed downstairs, followed by Damon's heavy footsteps. Elena's wolf perked up despite everything, still responding to her mate's presence like a flower turning toward the sun. "Elena!" His voice boomed through the house, filled with an excitement that made her heart clench. "I have news." She met him at the top of the stairs, the medical report hidden behind her back. Damon's dark eyes blazed with triumph, his powerful frame radiating satisfaction as he bounded up the steps 2 at a time. "The council voted," he said, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around. "We're expanding the pack territories, merging with 3 smaller packs. But there's a condition." Elena's stomach dropped. "What condition?" "I need to prove the bloodline is secure. They want to see an heir within the year." His hands cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheeks. "After tonight's pack meeting, we'll announce that we're trying for pups. The whole pack will celebrate." The report seemed to burn against her back. "Damon, I need to tell you something. Whatever it is can wait." He kissed her deeply, his wolf rumbling with contentment. "Tonight is about our future, our legacy. Nothing else matters." But everything mattered. Everything was about to fall apart. The pack meeting took place in the Great Hall, every member of Silvermoon in attendance. Elena stood beside Damon's throne-like chair, her Luna crown feeling heavier than ever. The medical report was tucked into her pocket, the paper soft from her nervous handling. "My pack," Damon's voice filled the hall, commanding absolute attention. "Tonight marks a new chapter in our history." Cheers erupted from the crowd. Elena forced a smile, her wolf pressing against her ribcage like a caged animal sensing danger. "The Alpha Council has granted us the largest territory expansion in pack history. But more importantly, they've recognized the strength of our bloodline. Soon, Elena and I will announce our first pup." More cheers. Elena's knees nearly buckled. She had to tell him, had to stop this before it went any further. "Damon." She touched his arm, her voice barely audible above the celebration. He turned to her with a brilliant smile, his hand covering hers. "What is it, my love?" Elena pulled out the report with shaking fingers. "I need to tell you about this." His smile faded as he took the paper, his dark eyes scanning the medical terminology. The color drained from his face as understanding dawned. "What is this?" His voice was deadly quiet. "The results from my examination." "Damon, I can't." "You can't have pups." The words fell like stones into the sudden silence of the hall. Every pack member strained to hear, the festive atmosphere evaporating. The damage from the rogue attack was more severe than we thought. I wanted to tell you privately, but you let me make a fool of myself in front of the entire pack." His roar echoed off the walls, his wolf rising to the surface with fury that made Elena step back. "You let me promise the council heirs you can't provide. I just found out today, I swear." "Silence." The command hit her like a physical blow, her wolf automatically submitting to his alpha authority. "You've known we needed heirs. You've known the pack's future depended on continuing our bloodline. And you've been defective this entire time." The word hit her like a slap. Defective. Around them, pack members began to murmur, their excitement turning to shock and then to something worse, disappointment. "Damon, please," she whispered, reaching for him. He jerked away from her touch. "The mate bond was a mistake. The moon goddess paired me with a Luna who can't fulfill her most basic duty." "That's not true. I can still lead the pack, still be your partner. A Luna who can't produce heirs is no Luna at all." His eyes had gone completely black, his wolf in full control. "I, Alpha King Damon Blackwood, hereby reject you, Elena Winters, as my mate and Luna of the Silva Moon pack." The words slammed into her like a physical force. The mate bond, that golden thread that had connected them for 3 years, began to fray. Elena collapsed to her knees as agony ripped through her chest. "I banish you from these lands," Damon continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You have until dawn to leave Silvermoon territory. If you're found here after sunrise, you'll be treated as a rogue." Elena couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The bond snapped completely, leaving a gaping wound in her chest that felt like it might kill her. Around them, the pack watched in stunned silence as their Luna fell apart on the great hall floor. "The pack meeting is over," Damon announced. "Return to your homes." Elena knelt there as the hall emptied, blood trickling from her nose from the trauma of the severed bond. Only when she was completely alone did she manage to stagger to her feet. She had 6 hours until dawn. 6 hours to gather what she could carry and disappear from the only home she'd ever known. Elena fled into the night with nothing but a backpack and the clothes on her back. The forest blurred past her as she ran in human form, her wolf too damaged by the rejection to shift. Every step took her further from everything she'd ever known. She collapsed at the edge of pack territory just as the sun crested the horizon, her body racked with sobs and the lingering agony of the broken bond. Blood stained her shirt from internal injuries caused by the violent severing of their connection. She didn't know that even then, 3 tiny heartbeats were growing inside her womb, a miracle that would remain hidden for months to come. The moon goddess, it seemed, had one more twist in store for the defective Luna and the Alpha King who had cast her aside. As Elena stumbled toward an uncertain future, she made herself a promise. She would never again allow anyone to define her worth. She would build a new life, a stronger life, far from the world that had rejected her. She just never imagined that 5 years later, fate would place Damon's life literally in her hands. Chapter 2. 5 years later. Dr. Elena Winters. She'd legally changed her name from Blackwood the day after her divorce was finalized. Checked her watch as she stepped out of the operating room. Another successful triple bypass, another life saved. Her reputation as one of the country's most skilled cardiothoracic surgeons had been hard-earned through 18-hour days, sleepless nights studying, and an iron determination to prove she was anything but defective. "Mommy!" 3 voices called out in unison as she entered the hospital's family lounge. Elena's heart swelled as always at the sight of her miracle children, Aria, Lucas, and Max, all 4 years old and the absolute center of her world. Aria launched herself into Elena's arms first, her dark curls bouncing as she babbled excitedly about the book Mrs. Patterson had read to them about wolves. Lucas hung back slightly, his serious amber eyes studying his mother's face with the intensity that made him seem older than his years. Max bounced on his toes, barely containing his energy as he waited his turn for hugs. "How was surgery, Mommy?" Lucas asked, slipping his small hand into hers. Of her 3 pups, he was the most intuitive, already showing signs of the empathic abilities that ran in the strongest wolf bloodlines. "Successful," Elena said, kneeling to gather all 3 children close. "Dr. Martinez will take good care of the patient while he recovers." Mrs. Patterson, their elderly nanny, approached with a warm smile. "They've been angels as always," though Max did try to climb the hospital's indoor tree again. Elena shot a look at her youngest son, who grinned unrepentantly. Max had been walking since he was 8 months old, and climbing everything in sight since then. His physical abilities were already far beyond human normal, a fact that terrified and amazed Elena in equal measure. We talked about using human strength in public places, she reminded him gently. But it's so slow, Max complained, his golden eyes, so like his father's, sparkling with mischief. All 3 children had inherited Damon's eyes and his powerful wolf genetics. Arya could already sense emotions through touch. Lucas seemed to know things before they happened, and Max's strength was increasing daily. Elena lived in constant fear that someone would notice what her children were becoming. They were also the greatest joy of her life. "Come on, little wolves," she said, using the nickname that never failed to make them giggle. "Let's go home. I'll make grilled cheese for dinner." "With the good cheese?" Arya asked hopefully. "With the good cheese," Elena confirmed. As they walked toward the parking garage, Elena's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number made her blood run cold. Dr. Marcus Chun, chief of cardiology at Seattle Presbyterian. She'd worked with Marcus before on complicated cases, but something in the urgency of his call sent warning bells through her mind. "Elena, thank God," Marcus said the moment she answered. "I need you to sit down. I'm walking to my car with the kids." "What's wrong?" "I've got a case that specifically requested you. High priority, life or death. The patient's team flew him here from Montana specifically because of your reputation." Elena's steps slowed. "Montana." Her stomach clenched with a familiar dread. "What's the condition?" she asked, proud that her voice remained steady. "Severe cardiomyopathy complicated by acute myocardial infarction. The patient's been in and out of cardiac arrest for the past 12 hours. Elena, his heart is literally breaking down from stress. We need to do a complete valve replacement and possibly a transplant." "Who is it?" There was a pause that stretched too long. "The patient's name is Damon Blackwood. He's the Alpha King of the Silva Moon Pack." Elena stopped walking entirely. The phone slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering to the concrete floor of the parking garage. "Mommy!" Arya was instantly at her side, small hands reaching up to touch Elena's face. "Mommy, you're scared." Lucas moved to her other side, his amber eyes wide with concern. Even Max stopped bouncing, sensing the shift in his mother's emotions. Elena retrieved her phone with shaking hands. "Marcus, I can't." "Elena, listen to me. The man is dying. Whatever history you have with him, you're the only surgeon on the West Coast with the skill to save his life. His current Luna died in a car accident 3 days ago, and the grief is literally killing him." "Luna." Damon had taken a new mate. Of course he had, he'd needed heirs, and Elena had been defective. The knowledge shouldn't hurt after all these years, but it sliced through her like a blade. "Mommy's crying," Max announced loudly, causing several passers-by to look in their direction. Elena wiped her eyes, unaware tears had started falling. "I'm fine, sweetheart. The patient's beta is here," Marcus continued. "A man named Cameron Brooks. He says they've tried 3 other surgical teams, but the Alpha's body keeps rejecting treatment. Something about his wolf not trusting unfamiliar pack members. Brooks specifically asked for you." "Cameron." Elena remembered him, Damon's best friend and second in command. If he'd requested her specifically, he knew exactly who she was. "Elena, are you there?" She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices. "How long do I have?" "He's stable for now, but not for long. I need an answer tonight." Elena looked down at her 3 beautiful children, their faces turned up to hers with complete trust and love. They deserved to know about their heritage, even if she'd never told them about their father. They deserved to see the world they came from. "I'll do it," she said finally. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "My children come with me. Non-negotiable. And I want full discretion about my personal history with the patient." "Done." "Elena, thank you. You're saving a lot of lives here. Without their Alpha King, the entire pack alliance could collapse into war." Elena ended the call and knelt before her children, her heart pounding. "How would you 3 like to visit the werewolf lands?" The reaction was immediate and explosive. All 3 children began talking at once, eyes bright with excitement. "Really, Mommy? Really?" Arya bounced on her toes. "Will we see real wolves?" Lucas asked seriously. "Can I race them?" Max added, causing Elena to laugh despite everything. "We'll see," she said, gathering them close. "But remember, we'll be visiting a very important pack. You'll need to be on your best behavior." "We promise," they said in unison, the way they often did when they were excited. As Elena buckled them into their car seats, her mind raced with everything that could go wrong. Damon would see the children and know immediately they were his. The Blackwood genetics were too strong to hide. The pack would recognize her despite the years and changes. Her carefully constructed human life would crumble in a single moment. But the alternative was letting the father of her children die. And despite everything he'd put her through, despite the rejection and banishment and years of struggle, Elena couldn't do that. Whatever Damon had become to her, he was still the biological father of the three most precious beings in her world. "Mommy," Arya said softly as they drove through the Seattle streets. "Are we going home?" Elena glanced in the rearview mirror at her daughter's thoughtful expression. Of her three children, Arya was the most intuitive about emotions, often sensing things she couldn't possibly understand. "What do you mean, baby?" "I don't know," Arya said, frowning. "I just feel like we're going somewhere important. Somewhere we belong." Elena's hands tightened on the steering wheel. For years old, and already Arya's wolf was responding to the pull of pack lands, recognizing something her human mind couldn't process. "We're going on an adventure," Elena said carefully. "To help someone who's very sick." "Someone important?" Lucas asked. "Very important." Max pressed his face to the window as they turned onto their street. "Will there be other wolf kids there?" "Probably," Elena admitted. The pack house had always been full of families, children running through the halls while adults conducted business and daily life continued around them. "Good," Max said decisively. "I want to play with kids who are strong like me." Elena's heart clenched. Max had never been able to play with human children his age. His strength made it impossible. Even at 4, he could accidentally hurt other kids without meaning to. The triplets spent most of their time with each other, creating their own little pack within the human world. They reached their modest 2-story house, and Elena began the familiar routine of dinner, bath time, and bedtime stories. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like an ending, and a beginning rolled into one terrifying package. "Tell us the wolf story," Arya requested as Elena tucked her into bed. It was their favorite bedtime ritual. Elena's carefully edited tales of wolf packs and forest lands, magical places where people could turn into wolves and families were bound by invisible threads of loyalty and love. She'd never told them these stories were memories, never mentioned that she'd once lived in such a place. "Once upon a time," Elena began, settling between Arya and Lucas while Max curled up at the foot of the bed, "there was a pack of wolves who lived in a great forest." As she spoke, she watched her children's faces in the dim lamplight. They hung on every word, their eyes bright with fascination. They'd always loved these stories more than any fairy tale, as if some part of them recognized the truth buried in her fiction. "Mommy," Lucas said when she finished, "in the wolflands, do the people have golden eyes like us?" Elena's breath caught. "Some do. And are they really strong like Max?" "Some are. And can they feel things like I do?" "Yes, sweetheart. Some can feel things very deeply." Lucas nodded solemnly. "I think we're going to like it there." After the children were asleep, Elena sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and her laptop, researching everything she could find about Damon's current condition and the pack's recent history. What she found made her blood run cold. 3 months ago, Damon had mated with Isabella Morrison, daughter of the neighboring pack's alpha. The union had been political, designed to strengthen the alliance between Silver Moon and Crescent Moon packs. 2 weeks ago, Isabella had died in what appeared to be a simple car accident, but the supernatural blogs Elena found suggested something more sinister. Without a Luna and with his mate bond severed by death, Damon's wolf was slowly going insane. The condition was called mate sickness, a progressive deterioration that occurred when an alpha lost his mate and couldn't properly process the grief. It typically resulted in heart failure, as the wolf literally died of a broken heart. Elena closed the laptop and stared out her kitchen window at the ordinary suburban street where she'd built her new life. Tomorrow, she would pack up her children and return to a world that had branded her defective and worthless. She would stand over the operating table and try to save the man who had shattered her heart and stolen her future. And somehow, she would have to find a way to protect her children from the truth of their heritage while giving them the chance to explore the world they'd been born into. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Flight leaves at 6 a.m. Private jet, discretion guaranteed. Thank you for this, Elena." Elena looked upstairs toward her children's bedrooms, where 3 little wolves slept peacefully, unaware that tomorrow would change everything. She'd spent 5 years protecting them from their father's world, building a safe haven in the human realm where they could grow up free from the politics and dangers of pack life. Now she was about to undo all of that protection with a single choice. But as she climbed the stairs to pack their bags, Elena knew she'd made the only decision she could live with. Whatever happened next, At least her children would finally get to see the world they'd been born into. And maybe, just maybe, she could save the man who'd given them life, even if he'd never wanted them at all. In Lucas's room, she found all 3 children piled together in his bed, sleeping in a heap the way wolf pups did when they sensed change coming. Elena kissed each small forehead and whispered the words she'd said every night for 4 years. You are wanted. You are loved. You are enough. Tomorrow, she would find out if those words would still be true in the world they were returning to. Chapter 3. The private jet touched down on the small airstrip outside Silvermoon territory at dawn, and Elena's wolf stirred for the first time in years. The familiar scent of pine and mountain air filtered through the cabin's ventilation system, awakening memories she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten they existed. Mommy, look! Arya pressed her face to the small window, her eyes wide with wonder. The trees are so big. Lucas sat quietly beside her, his amber eyes taking in everything with that serious intensity that reminded Elena so painfully of Damon. Max bounced in his seat, barely contained excitement radiating from his small frame. Are we really here? Max asked for the 10th time since takeoff. Are we really in Wolf Lands? We're here, Elena confirmed, her stomach churning with anxiety. In a few hours, she would stand over Damon's unconscious form and try to repair the heart she'd helped break 5 years ago. A black SUV waited on the tarmac, and Elena's breath caught as Cameron Brooks stepped out of the driver's seat. He'd aged in the past 5 years, silver threading through his dark hair, lines of stress around his eyes, but his presence still commanded respect. His gaze found Elena through the aircraft window, and even from a distance, she could see the complex mix of emotions crossing his face. Children, Elena said carefully. The man coming to meet us is named Cameron. He's going to take us to where I'll be working. Remember what we discussed about being polite and staying close to me. The triplets nodded solemnly, though Max was practically vibrating with contained energy. Cameron approached as they descended the aircraft steps, his expression carefully neutral. Dr. Winters, he said formally, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. Beta Brooks, Elena replied, accepting the handshake. His eyes widened slightly at her use of his title. She'd never forgotten pack protocols, even after all these years. These must be your children, Cameron said, his gaze moving to the triplets with barely concealed shock. Elena watched his face carefully, seeing the exact moment recognition hit. The golden eyes, the strong bone structure, the way Lucas held himself with unconscious authority. The Blackwood genetics were unmistakable. Arya, Lucas, and Max, Elena introduced them. Say hello to Mr. Brooks. Hello, Mr. Brooks, they chorused, Arya adding a small curtsy that made Cameron's lips twitch despite everything. How is your patient? Elena asked as they loaded into the SUV, desperate to redirect his attention from her children. Stable but declining, Cameron replied, pulling away from the airstrip. He's been asking for someone in his sleep, but we can't make out the name. His wolf is restless. Elena's hands clenched in her lap. What about his current condition? I'll need complete medical records before I operate. Already prepared, Cameron said, handing her a thick folder. Dr. Haynes has been monitoring him, but he agrees that surgical intervention is the only option. As Elena reviewed the files, her medical training warred with her personal knowledge. Damon's heart showed signs of severe stress fractures, the kind typically seen in wolves who'd suffered traumatic mate bond severance. But according to his records, Isabella had died 3 weeks ago. This level of damage would have taken months or years to develop. Cameron, she said carefully, these cardiac stress patterns, when did they start? He was quiet for a long moment, his hands tight on the steering wheel. About 5 years ago, he said finally. Right after. He trailed off, shooting a meaningful glance toward the children in the back seat. Right after he'd rejected her. Elena's breath caught as the full implications hit her. Damon's heart condition hadn't been caused by Isabella's death. It had been caused by rejecting his true mate. The recent trauma had simply accelerated damage that had been building for years. Mommy, Lucas said softly from the back seat. Something's wrong with your feelings. They're all twisted up. Elena forced herself to smile. I'm just thinking about work, sweetheart. But Lucas continued to study her with those two knowing eyes, and Elena realized how difficult it was going to be to hide anything from children who could sense emotions. The SUV turned through the familiar gates of Silvermoon territory, and Elena's wolf pressed against her consciousness with painful recognition. Everything looked exactly the same. The towering pines, the winding road leading up to the main compound, the smaller cabins scattered throughout the forest where pack families made their homes. It's like a fairy tale, Arya breathed, pressing her face to the window. Do people really turn into wolves here? Max asked Cameron directly. Cameron's eyes met Elena's in the rearview mirror. Some do, he said carefully. Your mother didn't tell you about shapeshifters? She told us stories, Lucas said. But she said they were just stories. Maybe they weren't all stories, Cameron replied gently. The pack hospital came into view, a modern facility that had been expanded since Elena's time. Cameron parked near the main entrance, and Elena felt her professional mask sliding into place. Whatever personal history existed here, she had a job to do. I'll need the children to stay somewhere safe while I work, she said. Already arranged, Cameron replied. My mate Sarah runs the pack nursery. She's prepared a room for them. Elena hesitated. Leaving her children with strangers went against every protective instinct she'd developed, but she couldn't bring them into surgery. We'll be good, Mommy, Arya said, slipping her small hand into Elena's. We promise. I know you will, Elena said, kissing the top of her daughter's head. Remember, stay together and... Don't let anyone know how strong we are, Max finished dutifully. Don't tell anyone about the feelings thing, Lucas added. And don't mention that we dream about wolves, Arya concluded. Elena's heart clenched. Her children had adapted to hiding their true nature so completely that it had become second nature. They shouldn't have to live like that. Sarah Brooks appeared at the hospital entrance, a petite woman with kind eyes and graying brown hair. Elena remembered her vaguely from pack gatherings, always warm and welcoming to everyone. You must be Elena's little ones, Sarah said, crouching to the children's eye level. I've prepared a special room just for you, with books and games and even some art supplies. Do you have coloring books with wolves? Arya asked hopefully. Sarah's smile widened. I do indeed. Would you like to see? As Sarah led the children away, Elena felt a familiar pang of separation anxiety. But Lucas turned back just before they entered the building, his amber eyes serious. Mommy, he called. The person you're helping, he's important to us, isn't he? Elena's breath caught. What makes you say that? Lucas tilted his head, considering. I don't know. I just feel like we're connected to him somehow. Before Elena could respond, Sarah gently guided Lucas inside, leaving Elena standing in the parking lot with her heart pounding. For years old, and Lucas was already sensing the bond he shared with his father. He's intuitive, Cameron observed quietly. All of them are, Elena admitted. It makes hiding their abilities challenging. Cameron studied her with those perceptive beta eyes. Elena, we need to talk. After the surgery. There are things you need to know about what's been happening here. Elena nodded, following him into the hospital. Whatever revelations awaited, they would have to wait. Right now, she had a heart to save. Dr. Haynes met them at the surgical wing. An older man Elena didn't recognize, probably brought in after her banishment. He briefed her on Damon's current condition, his medications, and the complications they'd encountered in previous treatment attempts. His wolf keeps rejecting our interventions, Dr. Haynes explained. It's like his subconscious doesn't trust any of us. We're hoping that having you here will calm his instincts enough to allow the surgery to proceed. Elena nodded, scrubbing in with the methodical precision that had carried her through hundreds of operations. But as she entered the surgical suite and saw Damon's unconscious form on the table, her professional composure nearly cracked. He looked older, harder. Lines of stress marked his face, and his dark hair was shorter than she remembered. But he was still devastatingly handsome, still radiating the power that had first drawn her to him all those years ago. Vitals are stable, announced Dr. Martinez, her anesthesiologist. But his blood pressure is elevated, and we're seeing some irregular heartbeats. Elena approached the table, and the moment she came within arm's reach of Damon, something impossible happened. The severed mate bond, dead for 5 years, flickered with the faintest thread of connection. The sensation hit her like a physical blow, and she gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Around her, the monitors began beeping frantically as Damon's vitals spiked. What's happening? Dr. Haynes demanded. Elena forced herself to breathe, to think like a surgeon instead of a former mate. His wolf recognizes me. The stress is triggering a response. She placed her hand on Damon's chest, just over his heart, and whispered words she hadn't spoken in years. Sleep, Alpha. Let me help you. The monitors immediately stabilized. Damon's breathing evened out, and the tension left his unconscious form. Remarkable, Dr. Haynes murmured. How did you? Old pack bonds, Elena said shortly. Let's begin. The surgery took 4 hours. Elena worked with laser focus, repairing damaged valves and clearing blocked arteries with the skill that had made her reputation. But as she worked, she couldn't ignore what she was seeing. Damon's heart told a story of prolonged trauma. The damage patterns were consistent with mate bond rejection. Not the recent severing from Isabella's death, but the older, deeper wound of rejecting his true mate 5 years ago. He'd been dying slowly ever since the night he'd banished her. Dr. Winters, Dr. Martinez said quietly. His brain activity is spiking. He seems to be dreaming. Elena glanced at the monitors, then at Damon's face. His expression had softened, and his lips were moving slightly, as if he were trying to speak. Elena, he whispered, so quietly that only she could hear it. Elena, don't leave me. Her hands stilled for a moment before she forced herself to continue working. He was dreaming about her, calling for her while she literally held his heart in her hands. Surgery is complete, she announced 2 hours later, stepping back from the table. The repair work should hold, but he'll need careful monitoring during recovery. As they transferred Damon to the recovery room, Elena felt that ghost of their old bond pulling at her consciousness. She'd spent 5 years believing their connection was completely severed, but proximity to her unconscious mate was proving otherwise. Dr. Winters? A young nurse approached nervously. There's a man here asking about your children. He says he's the Alpha. Elena's blood turned to ice. What Alpha? Alpha Richardson from the Crescent Moon Pack. He says he has questions about pack genealogy and wants to speak with you immediately. Elena's mind raced. Richardson was Isabella's father, and if he was asking about her children, it meant someone had already noticed the resemblance to Damon. Where are my children now? Still with Mrs. Brooks in the nursery. Elena hurried through the hospital corridors, her heart pounding. She found Alpha Richardson waiting outside the nursery, a tall, silver-haired man with cold gray eyes and an expression of barely contained fury. Dr. Winters, he said, standing as she approached. We need to talk. Through the nursery windows, Elena could see her triplets playing with building blocks while Sarah watched over them. They looked so innocent, so unaware of the storm brewing around them. About what? Elena asked carefully. Richardson's eyes blazed with accusation. About why 3 children who are clearly Blackwood bloodline are being passed off as human orphans. About why my daughter died while Damon's true mate and heirs have been living in secret for 5 years. Elena's world tilted. He knew. Somehow, Richardson had figured out not just who she was, but who her children were. I don't know what you're talking about, she said steadily. Don't lie to me, Richardson snarled. Those children have Damon's eyes, his bone structure, his power signature. And you. His gaze raked over her with disgust. You're the defective mate he rejected. The one who's been hiding his heirs while my daughter paid the price for a political alliance with a heartbroken Alpha. Before Elena could respond, the nursery door opened and Lucas stepped out, his young face set in lines of concern. Mommy, he said quietly, this man is angry. His feelings are all sharp and hurt. Did we do something wrong? Richardson's eyes widened as he took in Lucas's obvious intelligence, the way the child moved with unconscious authority, the power that radiated from his small frame, even at 4 years old. Impossible, he breathed. The pack doctor said you were infertile. Lucas, go back inside, Elena said firmly. But her son stood his ground, studying Richardson with those 2 knowing amber eyes. You're sad about someone who died, Lucas said suddenly. Someone you loved very much. But being angry at us won't bring her back. The observation hit Richardson like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his face going pale. How does he? Richardson started. Lucas, Elena said more sharply. Inside. Now. This time Lucas obeyed, but not before shooting Richardson one last penetrating look that left the Alpha visibly shaken. We need to discuss this privately, Elena said, fighting to keep her voice level. Yes, Richardson agreed, his voice hollow. We do. Because if those children are who I think they are, everything changes. The alliance, the pack territories, the future of both our bloodlines. As Richardson walked away, Elena sank into a nearby chair, her hands shaking. 5 years of careful hiding, of building a new life, of protecting her children, and it was all crumbling in a single day. Mommy! Aria's voice came from behind her. Elena turned to find all 3 children standing in the nursery doorway, their faces filled with worry. We didn't mean to cause trouble, Aria said softly. You didn't cause anything, Elena assured them, gathering them close. But I need you 3 to stay very close to me from now on, okay? Things might get complicated. Complicated how? Lucas asked. Elena looked down at her 3 beautiful, impossible children. Her miraculous triplets who shouldn't have been able to exist, who carried the blood of an alpha king who'd rejected their mother as defective. I don't know yet, she admitted. But whatever happens, remember what I tell you every night. We are wanted. We are loved. We are enough, they recited together. Elena prayed those words would still be true when the dust settled, and everyone learned the truth she'd been hiding for 5 years. In the recovery room down the hall, Damon stirred restlessly in his hospital bed, caught between sleeping and waking, calling out for a woman he didn't know was standing just 50 feet away, caring for the children he didn't know existed. Chapter 4. 3 days after the surgery, Elena was beginning to think they might actually escape Silvermoon territory without any major revelations. Damon was recovering ahead of schedule, his wolf healing abilities finally working properly now that his heart could pump blood efficiently. The triplets had charmed everyone they'd met, from the hospital staff to Sarah Brooks, who'd become their unofficial guardian during Elena's long hours monitoring her patient. Elena should have known the peace wouldn't last. Dr. Winters. Cameron approached her outside Damon's room, his expression grim. We need to talk. Now. Elena glanced through the window at Damon, who was awake and reviewing PAC business reports despite her medical orders for rest. His golden eyes met hers briefly through the glass, and she felt that phantom pulse of their severed bond. Stronger now that he was conscious, though he showed no sign of recognizing her. What is it? She asked, following Cameron down the hall. Alpha Richardson has been asking questions around the PAC. He's convinced your children are Damon's heirs, and he's gathering support for a formal challenge to their legitimacy. Elena's blood chilled. On what grounds? He claims that if Damon had true heirs all along, his mating with Isabella was fraudulent. That makes her death suspicious instead of accidental. Cameron's voice dropped to a whisper. Elena, he's suggesting Isabella was murdered to clear the way for the real Luna to return. That's insane, Elena breathed. I've been living as a human for 5 years. I had nothing to do with Isabella's death. I know that. You know that. But Richardson is grieving his daughter and looking for someone to blame. And your children? Elena, they're not exactly hiding their abilities well. As if summoned by his words, shouts erupted from the direction of the PAC's recreational area. Through the hospital windows, Elena could see PAC members running toward the forest, their faces filled with excitement and alarm. What now? She muttered, following Cameron outside. They found a crowd gathered at the edge of the tree line, all talking at once in excited voices. Sarah Brooks pushed through the group, her face flushed with exertion and something that looked like awe. Cameron, she called, you need to see this. Elena, where are your children? Elena's stomach dropped. They're supposed to be in the nursery with you. They were, Sarah said breathlessly. But when the full moon started rising, they became restless. I thought some fresh air might help, so I brought them out to the playground. But then, she gestured helplessly toward the forest. They just disappeared. One moment they were playing on the swings, the next they were gone. Gone where? Elena demanded, panic rising in her chest. Into the forest, said PAC member Jake Morrison. But Elena, they weren't running on 2 legs. The world seemed to tilt around Elena. What do you mean? 3 wolf pups came tearing out of the woods about 10 minutes ago, Jake continued, his voice filled with wonder. But they weren't ordinary pups. They were huge, bigger than most adult wolves. And fast. Faster than anything I've ever seen. The silver one had to be the size of a yearling, added another PAC member. But it moved like lightning. Silver? Elena whispered. Silver with dark markings, Sarah confirmed. And there were 2 others, one pure black, one golden. They ran right through the center of PAC territory like they owned the place, then disappeared back into the deep woods. Elena's legs nearly gave out. All 3 of her children had shifted. At 4 years old, during their first real full moon in PAC territory, they had not only managed their first transformation, but had done so with the size and power of wolves several times their age. Elena! Cameron's voice seemed to come from very far away. Elena, are you all right? Before she could answer, howls echoed through the forest. 3 distinct voices harmonizing in a song that made every wolf present shiver with recognition. It was a song of joy, of freedom, of young wolves discovering their true nature for the first time. It was also loud enough to wake every supernatural creature within 20 miles. Oh no, Elena breathed. They don't know how to control it. She ran toward the forest, ignoring Cameron's calls behind her. Elena shifted mid-stride, her wolf form smaller and less powerful than she remembered, but still capable. She followed her children's scent trail deeper into the woods, her heart pounding with fear and maternal desperation. She found them in a moonlit clearing, 3 magnificent wolf pups who shouldn't have been able to exist. Max, she could tell by his golden coat, was nearly the size of an adult male, his wolf form radiating the kind of power that marked future alphas. Lucas, pure black like his father, moved with fluid grace that spoke of incredible speed and agility. And Arya, her silver coat gleaming in the moonlight, practically glowed with an otherworldly energy that made Elena's wolf whimper in recognition. They were playing, tumbling over each other in the clearing like ordinary wolf pups, but their every movement spoke of power that would terrify adult wolves. When they saw Elena approach, all 3 rushed toward her with excited yips and playful growls. Elena shifted back to human form, not caring about her nakedness in the moonlight. "Children," she said urgently, "you need to shift back. Now!" They tilted their wolf heads at her, confusion in their golden eyes. Elena realized with growing horror that they might not know how to change back voluntarily. "Think about your human selves," she instructed, kneeling in the dirt. "Think about your hands, your human voices. Think about—" Well, a cold voice interrupted from the edge of the clearing. "What do we have here?" Elena spun around to find Alpha Marcus Steele emerging from the shadows, flanked by 3 of his pack warriors. Marcus was the leader of the Northern Territories pack, known for his ambition and ruthless pursuit of power. He was also one of the few alphas strong enough to challenge Damon's authority. "Marcus," Elena said carefully, trying to position herself between him and her children. "What are you doing on Silvermoon territory?" "Paying a visit to congratulate our dear Alpha King on his recovery," Marcus replied smoothly, his pale eyes fixed on the 3 wolf pups behind Elena. "Though I must say I didn't expect to find such interesting wildlife in these woods." The triplets had picked up on Elena's tension. They moved closer to her, their hackles rising as they sensed the threat Marcus represented. Max, even in wolf form, positioned himself protectively in front of his siblings. "Just ordinary wolf pups," Elena said, hoping her voice sounded steadier than she felt. Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and dangerous. "Ordinary? My dear doctor, those pups are the size of adult wolves and radiating enough power to make my warriors nervous. There's nothing ordinary about them." He stepped closer, and Elena fought the urge to shift and attack. She was outnumbered and out of her league when it came to pack politics. "The question is," Marcus continued, "who do they belong to? Because I can smell Blackwood blood on them from here." Elena's heart stopped. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" Marcus circled her slowly, like a predator studying prey. 3 extraordinarily powerful wolf pups with no apparent parents, discovered in the territory of an alpha king who's been mysteriously heartbroken for years. An alpha king who's been calling out for someone named Elena in his sleep. Behind Elena, she heard the soft sounds of shifting. Her children were changing back to human form, probably triggered by stress and fear. She prayed they would stay quiet. "You're being paranoid," Elena said. "Am I? Because I'm starting to wonder if the good doctor who saved our alpha's life might be more than she appears." Marcus's pale eyes glittered with malicious intelligence. "I'm wondering if maybe the supposedly defective mate who was banished 5 years ago has been hiding some very important secrets." "Mommy!" Arya's small voice cut through the tension like a blade. Elena turned to see her daughter standing naked in the moonlight, her silver hair gleaming and her golden eyes wide with confusion and fear. Lucas and Max flanked their sister, both boys instinctively protective even at 4 years old. In human form, their resemblance to Damon was even more pronounced, the strong jawlines, the commanding presence, the way they held themselves with natural authority. Marcus sucked in a sharp breath. "Impossible," he whispered. "The pack doctor said you were infertile." "We were never properly tested," Elena said desperately. "The diagnosis was wrong." "Mommy," Lucas said quietly, "this man wants to hurt us. I can feel it." Marcus's eyes widened further at the demonstration of Lucas's empathic abilities. "A truth seer," he breathed. "And look at the size of them. The power rolling off them." His gaze fixed on Max, who was unconsciously standing in a dominant stance despite his age. "That one's going to be an alpha. Maybe all of them." Elena stepped protectively in front of her children. "Marcus, please." "No wonder Damon's been half dead for 5 years," Marcus said, his voice filled with growing excitement. "His true mate and heirs have been hidden away while he nearly destroyed himself with grief. This changes everything." "Changes what?" Elena demanded. Marcus smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression she'd ever seen. The entire pack hierarchy, my dear. If these children are legitimate Blackwood heirs, and their power signatures suggest they are, then Damon's mating with Isabella was fraudulent. Which means any alliances built on that union are void. You can't prove anything, Elena said. Can I? All it takes is one simple test. Marcus pulled out his phone. Alpha Richardson will be very interested to know that his suspicions were correct. And the Pack Council will be fascinated to learn that the supposedly defective Luna has been raising the most powerful young wolves seen in generations. Elena felt her world crumbling around her. What do you want? From you? Nothing. You're just a pawn in a much larger game. Marcus's smile widened. But these children are the key to reshaping the entire supernatural political landscape. We're not keys, Max said suddenly, his young voice carrying an odd authority that made Marcus take a step back. We're people, and you're scaring our mama. The casual display of dominance from a 4-year-old seemed to unnerve even Marcus. His warriors shifted uneasily, their wolves recognizing something in Max that defied their understanding of pack hierarchy. Remarkable, Marcus murmured. Absolutely remarkable. Damon has no idea what he's lost, does he? Before Elena could respond, howls erupted from the direction of the pack compound. Urgent calls that meant danger or emergency. Marcus frowned, his attention momentarily distracted. Mommy, Arya whispered, tugging on Elena's arm. Someone's coming. Someone angry. Elena strained her hearing and caught the sound of vehicles approaching through the forest, engines running hard and voices shouting orders. The cavalry arrives, Marcus observed dryly. How disappointing. I was hoping for a longer conversation. The first SUV burst into the clearing, followed by 2 more. Cameron Brooks leaped from the lead vehicle before it had fully stopped, his face a mask of fury and concern. Behind him came a dozen pack warriors, all armed and ready for trouble. Marcus, Cameron snarled. What the hell are you doing on our territory? Simply admiring the local wildlife, Marcus replied smoothly. Though I must say, Silva Moon is raising some very interesting pups these days. Cameron's gaze found Elena and her naked children, and she watched understanding dawn in his eyes. Elena, are the children hurt? They're fine, she said quickly, gathering her triplets close. We were just discovering some fascinating family secrets, Marcus interrupted. Cameron, you might want to have a serious conversation with your alpha about honesty and full disclosure. The Pack Council frowns on leaders who hide legitimate heirs. Cameron stepped forward, his wolf rising to the surface. You need to leave. Now. Oh, I'm going, Marcus said pleasantly. But I'll be back very soon. With witnesses. And questions that your Alpha King is going to find very difficult to answer. He gestured to his warriors, and they began moving back toward their vehicles. But at the edge of the clearing, Marcus turned back one last time. Tell Damon that his past is about to catch up with him, he called out. And tell him that when it does, everything he thinks he knows about his life is going to change. The sound of engines faded into the distance, leaving Elena standing in the moonlit clearing with her children pressed against her sides and Cameron staring at them with a mixture of awe and alarm. Elena, Cameron said quietly, we need to get you and the children back to the compound immediately. And then we need to have a very long conversation about what just happened here. Elena looked down at her 3 beautiful, powerful children, her impossible miracles who had just revealed themselves to one of the most dangerous alphas in North America. Max was trying to comfort his sisters, Lucas was studying Cameron with those knowing eyes, and Arya was unconsciously glowing with that silver light that marked her as something beyond ordinary. Are we in trouble, Mommy? Arya asked softly. Elena pulled her daughter closer, remembering her own words from years before. No, baby. We're not in trouble. But as Cameron led them back toward the compound, Elena knew she was lying. They were in more trouble than any of them could imagine. And the carefully constructed life she'd built for her children was about to be destroyed by the very abilities that made them special. In his hospital room, Damon Blackwood woke from restless sleep with the taste of moonlight on his tongue and the echo of children's laughter in his ears. Something had changed in his territory tonight. Something that made his wolf pace restlessly in his chest and filled him with an urgency he couldn't name. He didn't know that 50 yards away, 3 small wolves had just changed his life forever. Chapter 5. 2 days after the forest incident, Damon was finally strong enough to leave the hospital. Elena had hoped to use his discharge as an excuse to leave Silver Moon territory immediately, but the pack had other plans. To celebrate their Alpha King's recovery, the elders had organized a traditional harvest festival, complete with food, music, and the kind of pack bonding that made Elena's skin crawl with memories. "I really think we should go home," Elena said to Cameron for the 10th time as she watched pack members setting up tables in the main courtyard. "Damon is recovered, my work here is done." "Elena," Cameron interrupted gently, "you can't run forever." And after what Marcus saw in the forest, leaving now would only confirm his suspicions. Elena's gaze found her children across the courtyard, where they were helping Sarah arrange flowers on the tables. Even in the afternoon sunlight, they seemed to glow with an inner radiance that made other pack members stop and stare. Several wolves had approached Cameron with questions about the visiting children, all noting their unusual power signatures and undeniable resemblance to their alpha. "Besides," Cameron added quietly, "Damon's been asking about you. He doesn't remember who you are exactly, but something about your presence is stirring memories. Maybe it's time." "It's not time for anything," Elena cut him off sharply. "I'm not here for reconciliation or revelations. I'm here because you asked me to save his life. Now that I have, we're leaving." But even as she said the words, Elena knew they weren't true. Marcus Steele's threats hung over them like a sword, and Alpha Richardson had made it clear he wasn't done investigating her children's parentage. Running now would only make things worse. "Mommy, look!" Aria's excited voice carried across the courtyard. Elena turned to see her daughter racing toward her with arms full of autumn leaves, Max and Lucas close behind. "We helped decorate everything," Max announced proudly, his golden eyes sparkling with excitement. "And Mrs. Sarah says there's going to be dancing and games and food," Lucas added, though his expression was more cautious than his siblings. Of her 3 children, Lucas had always been the most sensitive to emotional undercurrents, and Elena could see the worry in his young face. "It sounds wonderful," Elena said, forcing a smile. "But remember what we discussed about staying close to me tonight." "Because of the angry man from the forest?" Aria asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Because crowds can be overwhelming," Elena corrected, though all 3 children looked unconvinced. As evening fell, the courtyard filled with pack members from across Silvermoon territory. Elena kept her children close, but she couldn't deny their fascination with finally seeing the wolf world she'd told them stories about. They watched everything with wide eyes, the casual displays of supernatural strength, the way pack members moved in natural hierarchies, the children who played games that would be impossible for humans. "They belong here," Cameron observed quietly, appearing at Elena's elbow with 2 cups of mulled cider. "Look at them, Elena. They're not hiding or afraid. They're home." Elena followed his gaze to where her triplets were cautiously approaching a group of pack children near the bonfire. Max was the first to join in their game of supernatural tag, his speed allowing him to keep up despite his human upbringing. Aria followed, her natural charm quickly winning over the other children. Only Lucas hung back, content to watch and analyze everything with those knowing amber eyes. "This isn't their home," Elena said firmly. "Their home is Seattle, where they can be safe and normal." "Elena!" The deep voice behind her made every nerve in her body freeze. She turned slowly to find Damon approaching, flanked by his usual retinue of pack officials. He looked magnificent in the firelight, powerful, commanding, every inch the Alpha King who had once held her heart in his hands. He also looked completely puzzled. "Alpha," Elena said formally, inclining her head in the respectful nod she'd once given other pack leaders. "Please, just Damon," he said, his golden eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her want to run. "I wanted to thank you personally for the surgery. Cameron tells me I would have died without your intervention. I was just doing my job. Were you?" Damon stepped closer, and Elena caught his familiar scent, pine and leather and something uniquely him that still made her wolf whimper with recognition. "Because I have the strangest feeling that we've met before. In my dreams during recovery, I kept seeing." He trailed off, his gaze moving past her to where the children were playing. Elena watched his expression change as he took in their faces for the first time in good lighting, saw the recognition flicker in his eyes as their resemblance to him became undeniable. "Those are your children," he said slowly. "Yes. There." Damon's voice caught. "They look like children," Elena finished quickly. "They look like children. Now if you'll excuse me." She turned to collect her triplets, but fate had other plans. Max, in his excitement to impress the pack children, had climbed too high in one of the ancient oak trees that bordered the courtyard. Elena heard Aria scream just as her son lost his grip on a branch and plummeted toward the ground. Time slowed. Elena ran toward the tree, but she was too far away. Max hit the ground with a sickening crack, his small body rolling across the packed earth before coming to rest in an unnaturally still heap. Max! Elena's scream tore through the festive atmosphere as she dropped to her knees beside her son. Blood pooled beneath his head where it had struck a decorative stone, and his left arm was bent at an impossible angle. "Don't move him," Dr. Haynes commanded, pushing through the crowd that had gathered. Possible spinal injury. But Elena was already placing her hands on her son's broken body, her wolf rising to the surface as maternal instincts overrode everything else. She could feel the extent of his injuries, concussion, broken ribs, shattered arm, and the healing warmth that flowed from her hands as she began emergency treatment. "Mommy, is Max going to be okay?" Arya sobbed, pressing against Elena's side with Lucas close behind. "He's going to be fine," Elena whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it. Head injuries were dangerous even for young wolves, and Max was only 4 years old. As Dr. Haynes worked to stabilize Max, Elena became aware of a new presence beside her. She looked up to find Damon crouched just feet away, his face a mask of concern and something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. "The blood," he said quietly, his voice strange. "I can smell." Elena's heart stopped as she realized what was happening. Max's blood, spilled on packed territory, was carrying his scent to every supernatural nose in the vicinity. And the strongest nose of all belonged to the Alpha King, whose genetics her son had inherited. Damon's golden eyes went completely black as understanding hit him like a physical blow. Around them, other pack members began murmuring as they caught the scent and made the same impossible connection. "No," Damon breathed. "It's not possible. You were infertile," the pack doctor confirmed. "The pack doctor was wrong," Elena said quietly, her hands never leaving Max's small form. "But 5 years ago you couldn't. 5 years ago I was carrying them already." Elena's voice was barely a whisper, but in the sudden silence of the courtyard, every word carried. "I was pregnant when you rejected me, Damon. I just didn't know it yet." The revelation hit the gathered pack like a thunderclap. Elena heard gasps, saw shock ripple through the crowd. But all her attention was focused on Damon, watching as the full implications of her words sank in. "Pregnant," he repeated hollowly. "You were pregnant with my children when you called me defective and banished me from the only home I'd ever known," Elena finished. "Yes." Dr. Haynes looked up from his examination of Max. "I need to get him to the medical center immediately. The head injury is serious." "I'm coming," Elena said, starting to rise. "So am I." Damon's voice cut through the chaos with absolute authority. "If that child is mine." "If." Elena whirled on him, 5 years of suppressed rage finally exploding to the surface. "Look at him, Damon. Look at all 3 of them. They have your eyes, your bone structure, your wolf strength. They're mirror images of you at that age." "Elena, please." "Please what?" Elena's voice rose to a shout, causing several pack members to step back. "Please forgive you for destroying our mate bond based on a false medical report. Please understand that you had to protect the pack's future by casting out your defective mate. Please give you another chance to reject us when something better comes along." Damon flinched as if she'd struck him. "I didn't know. You didn't want to know." Elena screamed, her wolf clawing at her consciousness. "You were so eager to believe I was flawed, so ready to find an excuse to choose pack politics over our bond, that you never questioned the diagnosis." Around them, the pack watched in stunned silence as their former Luna finally released 5 years of pain and fury. "Elena," Damon said quietly, "if I had known about the children..." "What? You would have kept me around as a broodmare? Stayed mated to your defective Luna, just long enough to get your heirs?" Elena's laugh was bitter and broken. "How generous of you." Dr. Haynes cleared his throat urgently. "We really need to move the child now." Elena immediately refocused on Max, her maternal instincts overriding everything else. As they loaded her unconscious son onto a stretcher, she felt small hands slip into hers. Arya and Lucas flanked her, their young faces pale with shock and fear. "Is Daddy really the mean man from the big house?" Arya whispered, her golden eyes fixed on Damon with a mixture of curiosity and hurt. Elena's heart shattered as she realized her 4-year-old daughter had just figured out the truth she'd spent years trying to hide. "Daddy!" Damon's voice cracked on the word. "They call me." "They don't call you anything," Elena said sharply, gathering her remaining children close. "They've never known who their father was because their father made it very clear he didn't want them. She started toward the medical center, but Damon's hand on her arm stopped her. Elena, wait. Please. We need to talk. No. Elena shook him off with more force than necessary. We needed to talk 5 years ago, before you publicly humiliated me and threw me away. We needed to talk when I was 19 years old and terrified and bleeding from a severed mate bond. We don't need to talk now. But the children are my children. I raised them alone, protected them alone, built a life for them alone. You don't get to claim them now that they exist. Elena started walking again, but Damon kept pace beside her. They're my blood, he said desperately. My heirs. The pack needs nothing from us. Elena cut him off. We were fine without you for 5 years. We'll be fine without you for the next 50. They reached the medical center, and Elena pushed through the doors without looking back. But as she followed Max's stretcher down the hallway, she could hear Damon's voice behind her, raw with a pain that almost matched her own. Elena, please. I know I made a mistake. She spun around so fast that Arya and Lucas stumbled. A mistake, she hissed. You think rejecting your pregnant mate based on incomplete medical information was a mistake? Yes, Damon said simply. The biggest mistake of my life. Well, here's the thing about mistakes, Damon. Elena's voice was deadly quiet now, all the screaming rage compressed into something infinitely more dangerous. Some of them can't be fixed. Some of them change people so completely that going back becomes impossible. What are you saying? Elena looked at this man who had once been everything to her, her mate, her alpha, her whole world. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the regret, the dawning understanding of what he'd lost. 5 years ago, those emotions would have been enough to heal every wound he'd inflicted. Now they felt like too little, too late. I'm saying that the Elena who loved you, who would have died for you, who begged you not to reject her. That woman is gone, she said with quiet finality. I built myself into someone stronger, someone who doesn't need your acceptance or approval to know her worth. You can't have her back because she doesn't exist anymore. Damon staggered as if she'd physically struck him. Elena. Dr. Winters, she corrected coldly. That's who I am now. Dr. Elena Winters, successful surgeon, single mother, someone who saves lives instead of breaking hearts. The defective Luna you threw away is dead, Damon. I killed her myself the night you banished me. Before he could respond, Dr. Haynes emerged from the treatment room where Max was being examined. He's stable, the doctor announced. Mild concussion, broken arm, but nothing life-threatening. His healing abilities are remarkable. He should be fully recovered in a few days. Elena sagged with relief, Arya and Lucas pressing closer to her sides. Can we see him? Lucas asked quietly. In a few minutes, Dr. Haynes assured them. He's still unconscious, but you can sit with him. As the doctor walked away, Elena became aware that she and Damon were alone in the waiting area, her children the only witnesses to the destruction of whatever remained between them. Elena, Damon said one last time, his voice broken, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But please don't take my children away from me before I even get the chance to know them. Elena looked down at Arya and Lucas, saw the confusion and hurt in their young faces, and felt her resolve waver for just a moment. These children deserved to know their father, deserved to understand their heritage. But they also deserved better than a father who'd rejected them before they were born. Your children, she said finally, will decide for themselves what kind of relationship they want with you. But I won't make that choice for them, and I won't make it easy for you. You want to know them? Prove you're worth knowing. Elena took her children's hands and walked toward Max's room, leaving the Alpha King standing alone in the hallway, finally understanding the true cost of the choice he'd made 5 years ago. The scent of truth lingered in the air between them, blood and tears, and the death of something that might have been beautiful, if only he'd been brave enough to trust in love instead of fear. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to be the first to get notified when the part 2 of this story drops.